Subhanallah. Okay, so last week we did start reading here, section 11, clarifying the conditions for the validity of purification and the rules of tayammum, but we didn't finish this section. So let's just go ahead and start from the top here, and then we'll keep going, inshallah. And that'll give me a chance to repeat some questions for you that I asked you, so you should know the answer. So the author said, the conditions of a valid purification, be it wudu or ghusl, are 5. So what's purification? What's purification? 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, no, 3, not to be in a state of purity, 2, 1, mashallah. So purification is Raf' al-Hadath, lifting impurity. Wa izalatu najas, removal of filth. Aw ma fi ma'nahuma, or what has their significance. Aw ala suratihima, or what has their appearance. And whose definition is that? Whose definition is that? 5. Imam an-Nawawi, correct. Okay. So tahara is 4 things. Purification is 4 things. Raf' al-Hadath, lifting impurity. Izalatun najas, removal of physical filth. Aw ma fi ma'nahuma, or what has their significance, like tayammum and making istinja by a stone. Aw ala suratihima, or what has their appearance, like refreshing your wudu without having broken it before, and making sunnah ghusl for Jumu'ah, and the ghusl of kafir, wife of a Muslim man, because she menstruated, and other cases. MashaAllah. Like maybe y'all knew, you just didn't want to type the answer. Inshallah. That's tahseen al-dhan. So the conditions of valid purification, be it wudu or ghusl, are 5. The first is Islam. Therefore, the non-Muslim's purification from the minor and major ritual impurities is not valid. So we said, what's the exclusion from this case? A non-Muslim's purification from the minor and major ritual impurities is not valid. What did we exclude from this case? 5, 4.
The kafir wife ghusl?
Yes, correct. Correct. The ghusl of the Jewish or Christian wife of a Muslim man. Because, like what you just said, when she finishes her menses, she has to do a ghusl for him to have intercourse with her lawfully, and she has to fulfill all the integrals and conditions of the ghusl except the intention. So that's the 4th category of purification. What appears to be like those? Okay. The second condition is tamyiz, the capacity to reason and discern, meaning mental discerning or mental discrimination, which is the capacity to reason and discern. So the purification of a person who does not have mental discerning, such as a young child or an insane person, is not valid. And what did we say is the exception to this rule? What did we say is the exception to this rule here? The purification of the non-mumayyiz person is invalid. What's the exception to this rule? 10, 9, 8. Taking a non-mumayyiz child to do tawaf. Okay, I'll accept this answer. Not reading Quran. That's not purification. Reading Quran is not purification. We're talking about performing purification. You said a guardian can do it for them in Hajj or Umrah during tawaf. Correct. So we're saying here the exception to the rule is that a guardian can take a non-discerning person like a child or an insane pubescent person and make sure all the najasa is cleared from the body of this person and then do wudu on the organs of that person, make the intention on behalf of that person, and then wash that person's organs, because this non-mumayyiz person cannot engage in the purification personally. So the guardian is the one who has to take the water and put the water on the face and make the intention on the child's behalf, wash the arms, wipe the head, wash the feet with the ankles. Now, this is valid for this non-mumayyiz person, and then the guardian takes that non-mumayyiz person around the Kaaba validly. Takes them around the Kaaba validly. There's rules for going around the Kaaba, like keeping the building to your left side, for example. The third condition, and that's rewardable as a sunnah for that person. On Judgment Day, that one will find the reward for that, insha'Allah ta'ala. The third condition is the absence of anything which prevents the water from reaching the part that must be washed or wiped. So that means a barrier, the absence of a barrier which prevents the water from reaching the part that must be washed or wiped. And then I asked you a question last week, but my question was imperfect. So I'll repeat the question. What needs to be wiped with water in purification? What gets wiped with water in purification as opposed to washed? One person said the head, one person said foot gear. Head, khuf, and ears. The ears. Though the ears are not obligatory. The khufs are not obligatory in themselves. But khuf, okay. What else? One more thing I'm looking for. 2 out of 3 things have been mentioned here. The ears are wiped, that's true. And the cast, correct. The cast, according to proper rules. When you're unable to wash the organ because of a cast, then you wipe on it according to details, not absolutely. Wiping the head as obligatory in wudu. Wiping the khuf is obligatory if you don't wash your feet. And of course, all the conditions of khuf have to be fulfilled. But when it comes to wiping the khuf and washing the feet, you have the option. That in itself is optional. This or that. Yani, either one of them is obligatory. Do it this way or that way, as long as you fulfill all the conditions. Wiping ears is not obligatory, but it is something wiped with water. That's true. So it means then my question's still imperfect. And then wiping the cast according to its rules. Good. So when I said wipe with water, then that means we're not talking about tayammum, wiping with soil. Okay, barakallahu feekum. So the third condition is the absence of anything which prevents the water from reaching the part that must be washed or wiped. What does wash mean? What does wash mean? With water. Well, needs to be a little bit better. Because you can wipe with water too. So what does wash mean? Water flowing, correct. This for the water to run or flow over the thing. That's washing, as opposed to wiping. So you have wiping, you can wipe with water too. So you have a wet hand, just the surface of your hand is wet, or a wet rag. And then you apply that to another surface and wipe it. That's wiping. It's not washing though. So washed means to let the water run over it. What that means is that the flow of the water, yani, for the water to be flowing water is a condition for the washing to be valid. This doesn't mean, though, that the water has to drip. This does not mean that the water has to drip. Meaning, if you use just enough water to wash your organ and not more, and there wasn't a single drip that fell from your organ, this is valid. That's not wiping, even though there's no dripping. That's still valid. It's not mere wiping, although there's no dripping. That's still valid. Hence, if there were something preventing the water from reaching the part to be washed or wiped, such as grease sticking to the skin, yani oil, something that the water doesn't penetrate, purification is not valid. Correct. However, a substance that conceals the color of the skin but does not prevent water from reaching the body part, such as ink, meaning here the trace of ink, not a body of ink, not a bulk of ink, because that could be something that blocks the water. That could be something that the water would just flow over it and not actually go through it down to the skin. But the trace of ink does not prevent purification from being valid. And that's what you have when it comes to a tattoo, the trace of ink. So the tattoo doesn't stop the water from getting to the skin. But the tattoo has another issue, which is that the ink got contaminated by the blood when the tattoo was first applied. And then it stayed there. So something contaminated remained on the body perpetually. So then, if you have a tattoo, then your purification and prayer won't be valid unless your tattoo is pardoned. Unless your tattoo is pardoned, excused. How would that tattoo be pardoned? According to Abu Hanifa, it's enough to run water over it. And then it's, I don't know if they say pardoned or purified in Hanafi school. But if you run water over it one time, then you can pray and make purification according to the Hanafis. That's reliable in the Hanafi school. That's weak in the Shafi'i school, meaning there is a saying like that in the Shafi'i school, that you can just pour water over that tattoo, and then after that, your purification and prayers will be valid. That's a weak saying. The strong saying in Shafi'i school is that the tattoo will be unexcused, yani detrimental, preventing the validity of purification and prayer, unless there are conditions there. Such as what? Well, let me put it this way. Who's the person whose tattoo is not excused? If someone fulfills all of the things I'm going to list now, if all of them are true about someone, then his tattoo is not excused. If one of them is missing, then the tattoo is excused. What are they? That this person was sane, pubescent, Muslim, who knew it was haram, was not forced. Yani he did it on purpose. He knew it was haram. He did it on purpose, and he didn't have any medical excuse that has no alternative. He didn't have a medical excuse without an alternative. That's 6 things. Sane, pubescent, Muslim, who knew it was haram and did it on purpose. Yani he did it anyway. And does not have a medical excuse that doesn't have an alternative. 6 things. If all those 6 are true about a person, then his tattoo is not excused. If any one of them's missing, then the tattoo is excused. Now that he's a Muslim, yani. Now this Muslim, then his tattoo is excused. So if he was a kafir, and when he got the tattoo, and then he became a Muslim, then it's excused. So if you have any question about that, feel free, please. So what does that mean then? It's not excused. If we say it's not excused, then that means you have to remove it, or else your purification and prayers will be invalid. If you can remove it without a harm that validates tayammum. If one can remove this tattoo without a harm that legalizes tayammum, then one would be obligated to remove that tattoo, or else the purification and prayers won't be valid. I'm saying purification and prayers. The purification's not going to be valid because whenever the water runs over the spot, it's going to get contaminated by the najasa. So then it's going to make your ghusl always invalid, make your wudu always invalid if it's on a wudu spot. And or else the prayer is going to be invalid too because of the existence of the unexcused filth and because of the purification not being valid. So it's a big problem. MashaAllah. It's something that, subhanAllah, may Allah help us.
Shaykh?
Yes.
So just to clarify what you just said there, the tattoo, with regards to the invalidation of the prayer. So even if the tattoo was, for example, on their neck, right, that would still make the prayer invalid because that najasa you're saying is still a part of their body. Like
Yes.
It's on their body.
Yes, and also because of the ghusl won't be able to be valid because he has to wash his neck in ghusl.
Right. Okay.
Amin wafiq. You said, can you explain what validates the tayammum being tayammum part relating to the tattoo? We're going to talk about tayammum here. This goes back to the rules of tayammum, not rules of tattoo. Goes to the rules of tayammum. So what makes tayammum valid, that's known. So if someone can remove the tattoo without a harm that validates tayammum, and the validators of tayammum are known, we'll talk about tayammum inshallah, then he's obligated to do so if that tattoo is not excused. So what about a new convert who did tattoo before? Well, we just said it's conditioned that if the person was, when he got the tattoo, he was a Muslim. So a new convert means he was a kafir. So then, if the person were a kafir or insane or forced, or he didn't know it was haram, or he was below puberty, or he had a medical excuse, then the tattoo is excused. You said, do they have to wash it one time over? And is the tattoo excused or is not excused? If the tattoo is excused, then it's khalas, it's excused. He doesn't have to wash it. He doesn't have to target it. He doesn't have to target that spot because it's excused. No. Barakallahu feekum. The fourth condition is for water to flow on the part that must be washed while maintaining its natural properties. the natural properties of the water, even if assisted by rubbing with the hand. Yani, even if it doesn't move unless you push it, that's still valid because it is still flowing water. As long as what you're doing is not merely rubbing, as long as it's not merely rubbing, wiping, I mean, sorry. As long as what you're doing is not merely wiping, if it's water that does flow, but it's not going to flow unless you push it, that's valid. And like we said, it doesn't have to drip. So that's why you can make wudu with very small amounts of water. If you haven't tried to do so, then you should try sometimes. Like get just a cup of water, a small cup. If you get a small cup, you can make wudu with all the sunan, all of them, from one cup of water and still have some water left over. So give that a shot so you can see for yourself. Inshallah ta'ala. I'm not saying get a thimble, just get a cup, a small cup. Like 4 ounces, for example, if you use ounces. And when I said you can do all the sunan, I don't know if you're going to be able to wash up to your shoulders and up to your knees. I don't think I've tried to do that far with small amounts of water like that, but I still will have water left over, so I think it'll cover that too. Yeah, and I remind myself too, when you make wudu, if you make wudu from a sink, a faucet, then if you remember and you're not lazy, turn the water off in between washings. So you turn it on, put the water in your hand, turn the water off, and then wash. Put the water on your organ. Then turn the water back on and put it in your hand. Then turn it off. That's better. So that's decreases waste of water. Wasting water will decrease the reward of your wudu and your ghusl. Therefore, wiping the part that must be washed will not suffice, like we just said. The fifth condition is to use water that is pure in itself and purifying for others. This is called plain water. I'm going to say plain water, i.e., that which we call water without any necessary restriction, as is the case with rainwater. Without any necessary restriction means you don't have to add something to its name. Rainwater, you can call it water. Seawater, you can call it water, etc. Well water, river water, lake water, you can call all of that water. So whenever you can call that substance water, then it is plain water. Even if you are able to add something to its name to be more specific, but it's not necessary. Water remains plain as long as it is not stripped of its name as a result of being mixed with a pure substance. Not filthy. Pure here means not filthy. That means right now we're not talking about filth getting in your water, urine or feces or blood or anything like that. We're talking about something pure getting into your water. Tea, ink, etc., milk, salt, etc. Water remains absolute, yani, plain. Water remains plain as long as it is not stripped of its name, as long as it doesn't lose its name. I like the way this is worded, by the way. Stripped of its name. That's good. As long as it is not stripped of its name as a result of being mixed with a pure substance, from which the water can be easily shielded. Normally. Easily here means normally. This means if the word water is no longer applicable to the liquid owing to its significant change, then it is no longer plain. For example, if the water were mixed with milk, ink, or the like. We fixed this sentence last week. I'm not going to stop now to go over it though. For some reason, my annotations didn't save here. They usually do. A mixable substance is visually indistinguishable from the water it was mixed in. Yani, what does that mean, mixable substance? What constitutes that? He defines it for you. A mixable substance is defined as visually indistinguishable, meaning by your naked eye, you can't tell the difference between the water and what's in the water, as opposed to had there been oil in the water and the oil doesn't mix. So you can see this is oil and this is water. Contrary to an unmixable substance that only comes in contact with the water. Some said mixable here means you can't separate them. So that's two definitions. Mixable either means you can't see the difference between the water and what's in it, or it means you can't separate the water from what's in it. Any change as a result of coming in contact with an unmixable substance does not affect the purifying character of the water. So if there were oil in your water, you can still use that water. So you might say, well, what if the oil gets on my skin? That's something else, but you can still use the water. The water itself is still pure and purifying. If the mixable substance alters the water, causing a major change in its color, major means significant change in its color, taste, or smell. So when we say a major change, that word is important. We didn't say causing a change, because if we said causing a change, that would mean any change. And we're not saying that. It's possible that your water changes slightly by something in it and you can still use it because you'll still call it water. Causing a major change in its color, taste, or smell in such a way that the name water may not be applied to it. Yani, is not applied to it. You don't call it just water anymore. You don't have, if you have tea, you don't say, here's some water, even if it's 99% water, for example. Tea with no sugar in it, nothing else. Maybe that's 99% water. You don't call it water. Causing major change in its color, taste, or smell in such a way that the name water is not applied to it, then it is no longer considered plain water, thus losing its quality of affecting purification. Yani, it loses its purifying power. Water is by default purifying. Allah created it that way. What can water do? Water can cool things, and water quenches thirst, and water purifies automatically. Any water that fell down from the sky for you, to you, any water that fell down from the sky to you, khalas, you can take it and use it for purification. It has purifying power. Any water that sprung up out of the ground to you, you can take it and use it for purification. But if it changes significantly due to being mixed with something pure, so much that you don't call it water anymore, then you can't use it for purification. Yani, it loses its purifying power. So if someone washed his face with tea, then it's like he didn't do anything. It doesn't have any purifying power. What's a slight change? To give you a picture. Slight change is like, imagine if you had a bottle of soda, or maybe you call it pop, depends on where you're from. Soda pop, carbonated drink, yani Pepsi or Coke, or even a bottle of juice or a can of juice. And then you drank all of it, and then you filled that container up with water afterwards. And then you can still smell slightly whatever it was originally in that container, or you can taste it slightly. So it's not a significant change in the water. It's just very slight. You still call it water. This is still purifying. You said we learn from science that water is the universal solvent. What does solvent mean? Capable of dissolving more substances than any other liquid. MashaAllah. Barakallahu feek. Thank you. It says here, if this is a slight change whereby water retains its name, then it remains purifying. If, however, the water changes because it mixed with that which is hard to shield water from, then the purifying property of the water remains, even if the change is extreme. An example of this is a substance that is in the water's natural place. It says like weeds. I don't know if that's in the Arabic, because weeds not going to mix with the water. We're talking about something that blends with the water. Here, what's being used in this text is the word mix. If you want alternative words, yani synonyms, fuse, blend. Weeds are not going to fuse with the water altogether. So, yani, that's what they said here. An example of this is a substance that is in the water's natural place or its pathway, such as earth containing sulfur, yes. Or another similar substance which cannot be easily avoided. I asked Shaykh Samir many years ago when I was still a whippersnapper. And I said to him, does this include the rust in pipes? He said, yes, that includes the rust in pipes. So the water flows through rusty pipes and comes out orange. You can still use it because it's hard to keep that out of the water. It's in the water's pathway. And assuming that's not going to harm your skin. I'm not talking about if it's going to harm your skin or not, just talking about the fact that it's in the water's pathway. It is also a condition that the water used for purification must not have changed by najis filth. Now, this is another issue. Now we talk about najasa. We were just talking about something pure, like urine. Whether the amount of water the najis came in contact with was small or large, even if it were a slight change. The slightest change in the water because of najasa renders that water unusable. Because any change due to contact with najis makes the water impure, regardless of whether the change is small or big. Correct. However, if there is a large amount of water and no change occurs as a result of the contact with the najis, the water remains pure and purifying. Yes. Easy example for you. Swimming pool. That water remains pure and purifying. Yani, talking about a big pool, a big public pool, for example, or what's like that. They have all the little kids in there playing, maybe so many of them urinated in the water, even the adults. People are urinating in there. Still, that water is pure and purifying. With your knowledge that there's people who urinate in the pool, you still get in there too. Doesn't bother you. Because the water is not affected by this najasa. Well, knowledge, but assumption, yani, assumption. Probably someone did. However, if there is a large amount of water and no change occurs as a result of the contact with the najis, the water remains pure and purifying. Correct. That's because water of all liquids has the power to isolate filth and repel it, or dissipate it altogether if it's enough water. If the water were a little amount, i.e. less than 2 qullas, now here you can say, which is, because it just said 2 qullas right there. So you can say here, comma, which is the amount of water contained in a cubical container, square, yani cubic shape of a cube, container with the dimensions of 1 cubit and a quarter in length, width, and depth. With the dimensions of 1 cubit and a quarter. Here, how much? 1 cubit and a quarter in length, width, and depth. Cubit is from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger of an average arm. It's an old measure. You said pure pool water normally has chlorine, so we know it's not purifying. Then if this is what you say, it's like you didn't comprehend the lesson. May Allah have mercy on you. Because according to what you said, that means if there's chlorine in the water, then the water's not purifying. But is that the rule though? What's the rule? The rule is if the water changes drastically because of being mixed with something, then it's not purifying something pure. That's the rule. Not if it has chlorine or not. But does it change drastically? Not changes. Also, I stopped there. Look, here. That's why I underlined the word major there, and I stopped the comment on that. I said we didn't say any change. We said drastic change, major change. If it changes slightly, then it's still pure and purifying. Well, we learned that's still purifying, even if it has the chlorine in there. And in fact, one Shaykh said, he said, you go to the area that has the pool of chlorine, you smell the chlorine in the air. He said, but if you take the water and you sniff the water itself, you won't smell the chlorine. That's what he said. And I think that's true. It's in the air. Subhanallah. Then it is a condition in order for the purification with this water to be valid that it does not come in contact with najis filth that is not exempted. Yani, if it's only a little bit of water. Yes, this fiqh, this knowledge of fiqh, it's very special. It makes you know things, makes you know a lot of things. Like in the process of learning, you're welcome, no problem. Okay. In the process of learning rules, okay, you learn how to make wudu. Take the water, wash your face, wash your arms, wipe your head, wash your feet. Of course, make the intention when you wash your face. That's the wudu. But you need to pay attention to all the nice things you learn in the process of that. When you learn about wudu, when you learn about ghusl, when you learn about istinja, so many things besides just how to do it. This knowledge tells you all about the world, the earth and the sky and the everything, the animals and humans, all these different substances and things, all kinds of stuff. MashaAllah. Imagine those Muslims from a long time ago, like when Muslims had knowledge normally, when it was normal for Muslims to have knowledge. Like the average Muslim had knowledge like, for example, like Shaykh. The average Muslim was closer to a Shaykh, what we call Shaykh. Imagine your average Muslim was like that. Subhanallah wa bihamdi. The kuffar are ignorant. They still are. Yeah. So, if the water were a little amount, i.e. less than 2 kullas, then it is a condition that this water does not come in contact with najis filth. That's not exempted. Any najis filth at all. When it's only a little bit of water like that, it doesn't matter whether it changes or it doesn't change. All that matters is that it came in contact with the najis. Because the water, when it's a small amount, it becomes impure through this contact. Now, another thing about this this lucid word, I would like that if they made more paragraphs. Helps in comprehension here. You heard of run-on sentence? That's when the sentence goes on too long. So you have here like many topics all under one paragraph. All of this can stand to be broken into 2 or 3 paragraphs or more. That helps comprehension. طيب. However, if the water comes in contact with an exempted impurity, and even if the Arabic wasn't like that, even if the Arabic just kept flowing on like that, no paragraphs, I would suggest making paragraphs here. However, if the water comes in contact with an exempted impurity, excused, here they said impurity. So, filth, yani, najas, filth. I won't say impurity here. Because when I give these lessons, I usually use certain words. So, filth is for najas, for me when I speak. So, you know, filth is najas. That's what I mean when I say filth. Najas. Impurity, when I say impurity, means hadath, the religious impurity. So it says here, however, if the water comes in contact with an exempted filth, like if an insect that does not possess flowing blood dies in the water or dies before falling into the water and then is thrown in by the wind, for instance, provided no change occurs in both cases, then the water is not rendered impure. Okay. So here, it says here, however, if the water comes in contact with an exempted filth, first of all, there's an issue here. There's a difference between water coming in contact with filth and filth coming in contact with water. It's 2 different cases. So I don't have the Arabic here, so I can see if they translated it accurately. Assuming it's translated accurately. Still, though, there's a difference between the water coming in contact with the filth and the filth coming in contact with the water. Because whichever one comes in contact with the other is the stronger one. If you have najasa on a spot, on a surface, and then you pour water over it, then it's possible that the water that flows off of there is still pure. I don't want to go into the details of that for now, so that I don't digress too far. It's possible that the water that flows off of that spot remains pure, because in this case, the water is falling upon the najasa, and whatever falls upon the other is the stronger one. As opposed to having water and then the najasa falls into the water, which is the case being cited here. The case here is, they said, like if an insect that does not possess flowing blood dies in the water. Okay, it dies in the water. Okay. Or dies before falling into the water and then is thrown in by the wind, for instance. Yani, then it falls in the water. It dies in the water, like it falls in the water and dies in there, or it dies and then falls into the water somehow without you throwing it on purpose, though. So in this case, this is excused because that's exempted filth. This creature, this insect that died in the water or died and then fell in the water, that's excused filth. That's excused filth. So It says here, however, if the water comes in contact with an exempted impurity, so we can look and see what the Arabic says, but regardless what the Arabic says, know the right rule. Know that there's a difference between filth coming upon water and water coming upon filth. That's one thing. It says here, an insect. Okay, I know why they said insect. I doubt that the Arabic says insect. So insect, you mean six-legged creature according to those scientists. Insect is six-legged creature. According to them, a spider, for example, is not an insect. There's another name for it that includes insects too. And other things like millipede, centipede, and other things that have many legs. They're not considered insects. So I'm nitpicking here a little bit. What they say usually in the Arabic is a creature that does not have flowing blood. So that's one thing there. Just nitpicking a little bit. Then also here, it says, does not possess flowing blood. They usually say, so assuming this is translated properly, what they usually say is, it does not have flowing blood if it's cut or its organ is pulled off. That's what they usually say. It doesn't have flowing blood if it's cut or its limb is pulled off. They don't usually just say, it doesn't have flowing blood, and then stop. Yeah, at least in what I've seen. Maybe there's many fiqh books that I never saw in my life, and they say just like this. So I can tell you what I have exposure to. What's exempted is the dead, such a dead creature. That's exempted najis in your liquid. Such a dead creature in your liquid is excused. As long as you didn't throw it in on purpose, then it's not excused. Provided that no change occurs in both cases, as long as the water didn't change, then the water is not rendered impure. Correct. And we'll stop there. And then what's here also, I say, should be a new paragraph, really. We'll stop there.